Hi there, I'm Melanie Carr, and this is Erotic Abundance. Our podcast is about how to create a positive, connected, and abundant life using some scientific information, some psychological information, and some spiritual information all together to create like the perfect combination of human evolution. And we look for the top tips that people can use in their life in order to grow and evolve, and share them here with you. I want to talk about how to fly your body. We know how to fly a spaceship. We know how to fly a plane. We know how to do incredible things. As humans, we've discovered amazing things, how to fly to the moon. But we still haven't discovered how to fly our own bodies. And I want to talk today about dopamine and addiction and how it relates to human sexuality and motivation and our life purpose and our mission in life, and how to motivate and bring together these three elements. We talk a lot about addiction in the world, and most people are struggling with different kinds of addiction. Actually, there is no one who's not addicted to something. And people say, I'm addicted to alcohol, I'm addicted to sex, I'm addicted to drugs. And in actual fact, we're not addicted to those specific substances. We're addicted to the release of the dopamine, and the substance that makes our neurotransmitters fly and connects our neurons and gives us energy to motivate ourselves, and that great feeling, that high feeling, we can get from spiritual things, we can get it from meditation, we can get it from more destructive things like drugs and alcohol. And if we understood clearer how this all works in our body from a psychological standpoint, from a neuroscientific standpoint, and from a spiritual standpoint, and we put those three things together, we will have great keys and great information as to how to fly our body and how to get ourselves motivated and how to create, together with the synchronicity of the universe, with the scientific body information, and obviously working with the mind, which would be the psychology. So most people study one of these areas, and some people study several things about those different areas. But I think humans need to have a little bit more general information of all three areas, and they have to be in balance, and it has to come together in a perfect synergy so that we can have a faster, more successful, and it can just be a little bit easier for people. It's just kind of hard because we're separating it out. If you go to a psychologist, the psychologist will focus on you talking about your past traumas and going into back into the pain and all those things. That puts us on one certain vibration and can be very helpful when there's specific issues that we have to deal with that are always pulling us back. To work with the inner child and to deal with traumas is a very positive thing if it's done in the right way. But if there's issues of addiction and people don't even understand that what they're actually addicted to is the release of the dopamine in their body, that is releases created by the substances or the actions that we do, because we get dopamine release from many different things, including psychological, physical actions and substances. So there's a lot of ways that we can be addicted, whether it's food, whether it's addicted to certain kind of experiences. There's people that are addicted to the release of dopamine from having a spiritual, religious experience, and that's where people get addicted to certain kind of church activities or certain kind of like Alcohol Anonymous group. That group, you go to the group, and then people that are going through those processes are constantly talking about it and become addicted to the group they're in, which is obviously a much better addiction than drugs or alcohol. It sort of substitutes, but it's an action, and it's a not a specific substance. So there's many ways to have addiction, and there's good addictions and there's bad addictions, and there's even good addictions that if they go out of balance are not so healthy anymore, because we have to maintain that perspective, and we have to understand the motivation behind why we're having motivation towards certain activities and certain things. So in this podcast, my idea is to really bring together a perspective about all these different areas, study them on the cutting edges, as close to the cutting edge information as we can find, and share the little tidbits of juicy information to you, so that you don't have to spend the hours of studying and looking and searching for solutions. We want to kind of break it down and make it a simple guide as to how to fly your body. Your body, your mind, and your spirit, obviously. And curiously enough, that's kind of like the way it works with the science, because that's the body, the mind is the psychology, and the spirit is the spiritual. But those three things have to come together in balance for people to be able to advance in their lives and have a healthy, abundant, creative, abundant, erotic life. So when it comes to our motivation, and it comes to our creative, motivated energy, it's important to understand that at the end of the base of all of it, all of our motivation comes from the release of dopamine. It's in scientific terms, and I'm not good with scientific terms, so if I don't say it 100% in the exact way, don't pay attention to the technical detail. The neurotransmitter of the dopamine that puts the neurons together is what creates the sensation of pleasure in our bodies. And it's that sensation of pleasure that feels so good, whether you've just eaten a tub of ice cream or you've just had some kind of erotic experience with someone, kissing or connection, or you just went to a great ceremony at your church and had this amazing spiritual experience, or at the end of the day, all of it is basically an experience that created a release of dopamine, and that release of dopamine, then serotonin and epinephrine and all the substances, the neurotransmitter substances in the body, which I'm sure I didn't say it properly, but you can check podcasts on that if you want the exact scientific information. That is what creates the feeling of pleasure and bliss. And it's important to remember that, because I think we point a lot of fingers at people that as addicts, like, oh, he's a drug addict, oh, this is an alcoholic. Well, that's really a lot of crap, because we are all addicted. All of us are addicted to our dopamine sources and releases, and some people are able to keep it in balance, and other people are a little bit more compulsive and a little bit more extreme in that area, and then they go out of balance and create addictions that can cause harm to them. But at the end of the day, what they're looking for is that feeling of pleasure and bliss, and it has to become more and more intense each time. And at some point, the body's released so much dopamine from those things that it goes out of balance, and then kind of goes into a deficit. So it can be very, very painful, because on the backside of it, on the way down, the body has to compensate. We can't be producing those substances at such a high rate and not have a payback. You know, it's like having your bank account. You put $100 in the bank account and then you spend it. But if you go into debt, it can be really painful having to pay it back. And that's where the withdrawal and the pain comes in. Even when you end a relationship, it can be extremely painful, because you're not receiving the dopamine release that you're receiving when you're in a loving relationship with someone, and you hug and you kiss and you make love, and there's this great energy. And at the end of the day, it's created by that. It's also created by the connection that we feel and the spiritual world. It's also, the mind feeling motivated and having all the thoughts that are positive and the great energy that's created. It's a balance of all three things. But if it's not, it doesn't start with that physical dopamine release, then there wouldn't exist the rest of it. So it's a really important tip to get into perspective. And I found it fascinating because we have to stop criticizing and judging people that have addictions to more serious substances, because at the end of the day, we're all addicted to, it's our addiction to that release of dopamine is what keeps us alive, what motivates us, what makes us move, and keeps us going and keeps us reproducing and keeps us as a human species. And if it wasn't for those elements and the dopamine connection to it all, we probably wouldn't exist as a human species. So I wanted to put that into perspective a little bit. How can we manage this in a better way? I think it's important for us to understand it. I don't think a lot of people really understand that basis of addiction and that basis of motivation in their bodies. Some people even become addicted to exercise or work because they're getting that motivational release from those activities. So anything that becomes out of balance ends up becoming the basis for problems, and we have to have that release of dopamine, and then we have to have it going back into the state where we're able to relax and recuperate and create the other hormones and substances that we need in our bodies, and then go again for another motivation. So we need to have times where we relax, we need to have times where we have meditation, we need to have times where we eat healthy food with protein and more alkaline substances, and then we have to have times when we can go and have our ice cream or a glass of wine, or depending whether or not there's issues there where people have discovered that if they start having a glass of wine, they're having 10 glasses of wine and they can't stop. But if you're able to keep it in balance, then it's valid to have moments where we relax, where we go for it. But if we're conscious of what we're doing, if we're conscious of that feeling in our body and we understand it more clearly, then we can fly our bodies and our lives in a much better way. So more on this in the future, but I wanted to get that out there and down in a clear message for people to start taking a look at it on a better, more balanced in between all three things. And I want to bring those three areas into this podcast really clearly, because most people are either in the spiritual world, or they're in the psychology, or they're in the scientific area, but they're not bringing it all together to keep it all in balance. And it's important that we have that information from all three areas of life. Have a great day and analyze how you feel as you go through your day. Take a look and see what motivates you, what brings you down, what keeps you going, and take a good look at how you're going to fly your body and your life. Have a great day.